Hey, dear viewer, tell me, from which city and country are you joining me today? Maybe you're watching from a charming little town or a sprawling cityscape. Comment below, and please share this video. Your support is everything. Let's get started. Marrying her turned out to be a colossal mistake. In fact, it stands as the worst decision I've ever made. Not because of Lena herself, she was a good woman, but because of her mother. That woman was a nightmare. From the moment she met me, she made it her personal mission to undermine me at every turn. To be honest, I was far from innocent. But I wasn't some monster either. Like anyone else, I carried both light and shadow within me. I never pretended to be perfect. Sure, I'd gotten tangled up in some questionable situations over the years, but nothing serious enough to land me in prison. There was one incident, though, that almost did. I narrowly escaped thanks to Niels, my longtime friend, who was still in law school back then. We went back to high school together. He was the quiet, bookish kid with thick glasses, always buried in a novel while the rest of us were chasing girls and pulling dumb pranks. A few bullies decided he was an easy target, but I made it clear he wasn't alone. Two of them ignored the warning. They didn't make that mistake again. Now, as I write this, I'm 32 years old. I make a living as an independent contractor drilling geothermal wells, usually around 100 meters deep. The pay's solid. Lena and I have been married nearly 6 years, and we have a son who was born just 5 months after the wedding. Our life plays out in a quiet little Scandinavian town, in a modest home that would look ordinary to anyone passing by. But we're anything but ordinary. Thanks to her mother, who still hasn't forgiven me for getting Lena pregnant before she could marry the man her mother had chosen for her. I've suffered my share of losses, but I still cling to the hope that I'll come out on top in the end. Everything took a turn one particular summer night nearly 6 years ago. Midsummer's Eve, a cherished night in this part of the world. For centuries, it's been a time of celebration, the shortest night of the year. Up north, the sun barely dips below the horizon. Farther south, darkness lasts only a couple of hours. The entire country bursts into revelry. At that point, I was engaged to a gorgeous woman named Laura. We'd made plans to move in together on the 1st of August. I was supposed to upgrade from my tiny 2-room apartment to a more spacious 2-bedroom one. But as midsummer approached, a complication popped up. Laura had a cousin's wedding to attend on the holiday, and I wasn't on the guest list. That hit hard. Where I come from, if you're engaged, you're treated like a married couple. Being left out like that felt humiliating. Laura admitted it was insulting and likely due to my less than stellar reputation, but she still chose to go solo. I hadn't done anything to offend her cousin, never even met her. Laura agreed I had a valid complaint, but that didn't stop her. She wouldn't boycott the wedding for my sake, nor would she agree to spend the rest of the evening with me instead. If it had been any other night, I might have let it go. Honestly, even if I'd been invited, I probably would have skipped it. I didn't hold anything against the cousin for curating her guest list, but I did resent Laura for accepting such a degrading situation on the most significant night of the summer. We argued. She stormed out of my place that morning, and with that, our engagement was finished. I told her flat out, if that wedding mattered more than us, then she could go and stay there. I didn't want her coming back. Not long after, I regretted the words. I called her over and over that day, but her phone stayed off. Laura and I had also been invited to a big midsummer party at a friend's summer house. I ended up going alone and leaned into the role of a newly single man. That's where I met Lena. She had come with her fiancé, a sorry excuse for a man named Casper who couldn't hold his liquor. I didn't know much about her yet, but she caught my eye immediately. After Casper passed out drunk, I helped her drag him to the back seat of his car to sleep it off. Then she and I wandered back to the party for a while, before slipping away toward a nearby lake. We found a small dock, sat down, and before long, we were wrapped in each other's arms. I imagined something about my reputation, the rough edges, the danger, intrigued her. It usually does. That cliché about bad boys and beautiful girls, there's more truth in it than people care to admit. She fell for me fast, and she didn't seem to care how the night unfolded. Eventually, we ended up in the guest room she and Casper had reserved. One thing led to another, and we drifted off together in bed. Come morning, Casper woke up, saw us, and completely lost it. He threw his engagement ring at Lena and stormed off. That was the end of them. Later, Laura came back from the wedding and called me. She said she was sorry, admitted I had been right all along. She was the only one there without a partner, and it had been awkward as hell. The whole night had been miserable for her. She told me she had tried calling me over and over on Midsummer's Eve. When I finally checked my phone, sure enough, there were all the missed calls. She begged me to meet with her so we could talk about where we stood, and I agreed. But soon after, she called again, this time furious, after hearing I'd been seen out having fun with Lena. Her voice was seething with anger as she yelled that she was glad our engagement was finished. I didn't take it seriously at the time. But a couple of weeks later I started calling her, hoping she might have calmed down. She hadn't. Every conversation ended the same way. Cold dismissal and a suggestion that I escape to some far-off sunny place. I even tried to reach out to Lena now and then, but she refused to meet. She had nearly faded from my thoughts when, out of the blue 2 months later, she appeared at my doorstep. Her expression was full of concern. She said she needed to talk, and I let her in. She didn't delay. I'm pregnant, she said plainly, and it's yours. Then the tears came. We sat for hours, working through it all. She told me I was the only man she'd ever been with, and she made it clear she intended to keep the baby. Looking at me, she asked if I had the strength to stand beside her through it. What could I say? I knew even then that a child deserves both parents, so I agreed to try again. Lena was kind, graceful, and deeply committed to family. She might not have had Laura's sweetness, but she was still a solid choice for a wife. We decided to marry quickly. Of course, love plays a role in marriage, and neither of us could deny the passion we had shared that night. We were convinced it would return once the baby arrived. Lena spent that night with me. She told me she was genuinely happy. I had made my choice, and I intended to see it through as best I could. The next day, we visited her parents to share the news. That visit turned out to be both the first and the last time I ever set foot in their house. Her mother didn't greet me with concern. Instead, she exploded in anger. Rather than addressing things calmly, she launched into a tirade, accusing me of corrupting her innocent daughter and threatening to ruin my life through legal action. Her father, clearly cowed by her, stood silent as she raged. They weren't exactly welcoming. The family ran a print shop that had been in their hands for 2 generations, with her mother running it like a dictator. That shop had once led the region, but times had changed. The European Union, then made up of 15 member states, had created a more open market, and cheaper printing alternatives were becoming widely accessible. Meanwhile, countries like Poland and Hungary, with growing printing sectors, were preparing to join the EU and were already snapping up large contracts. In better years, Lena's family had done well, but they refused to adapt, avoided modernization, and lost clients steadily. I was unemployed then, and Lena's mother, perhaps seeing a chance to control me, insisted I work at their shop for a miserable wage. I turned her down. Staying on unemployment benefits actually paid more. I even picked up some part-time work with a drilling crew. In retaliation, Lena's mother reported me to the unemployment agency for refusing a job, hoping they'd penalize me. But nothing came of it. Then she had a lawyer draft a prenuptial agreement designed to leave me with nothing if the marriage fell apart. Just what she wanted. I had my friend Niels, a lawyer, rewrite the document to make it fairer. Lena signed the revised version behind her mother's back. 2 months later, we had a quiet wedding at City Hall, with only Niels and her best friend there to witness it. 5 months after that, our son was born. Over time, the bond between Lena and me grew into something resembling real love, and for the next 2.5 years, our life together was full of happiness. A few months into our marriage, A promising business opportunity came up. A rock drilling company was for sale at a bargain. The current owner had fallen in love with a woman he met at a beginner's square dancing class. She was a visiting doctor on contract at the local hospital. When she got an offer for a high-paying job in northern Norway, he decided to sell and follow her. The couple co-signed a personal guarantee, which helped me secure the bank loan without much difficulty. But everything started falling apart when our son turned 2.5 and began daycare. Lena went back to work at the family print shop, where she was being groomed to take over, giving her controlling mother even more sway. Back when the economy was thriving, her mother had invested heavily in stocks, blindly trusting her broker during a market boom. But when the downturn hit, the broker mishandled the portfolio, and she suffered major losses before realizing what was going on. Around that time, Niels, now a practicing lawyer, tipped me off about a sudden rise in one company's stock. I invested and made a fortune. I couldn't resist. I wanted to humiliate her. So I told Lena I'd made a windfall using a new stock-picking program, hinting there was more money where that came from. I asked Lena to take a look in the garage. I had something special waiting for her. Inside was a nearly new Toyota Yaris I'd gotten at a bargain. It was supposed to be her new runaround, something dependable for errands and everyday driving. Naturally, she mentioned it to her mother, who never missed a chance to get envious, and immediately pressed Lena to find out what major project I was working on next. To stir things up, I brought Niels in to dig up some worthless penny stocks. Then I built an intentionally convoluted Excel model that made it look like Mega X was a can't-miss investment. I'm fairly sure Lena went through my laptop and passed along the details. Predictably, her mother jumped on the hot tip and threw in a sizable amount, right before the stock crashed. One evening, Lena asked me casually, "Did you take a hit on Mega X?" "Not even a little," I said. "I got in early and sold right before the drop." "That's good," she replied. "Just curious." It turned out a few people had taken substantial losses, but that's the risk with speculative plays. High reward comes with high risk. I'd scored a crucial win against her mother, though I suspected she had an inkling that the bad tip wasn't accidental. Word was spreading that she'd ramped up her mission to see me fall. But that wasn't anything new. She'd been trying to sabotage me since day one. She'd even told her friends she'd get Lena to leave me, take our kid, and strip me of everything before the boy started school. At every event, she'd strategically place Lena next to eligible men, sons of her friends or business acquaintances, hoping one would stick. They were usually well-groomed and respectable. After all, Lena had been dating someone when I first met her. Her mother clearly believed she could do it again. She'd been working on prying us apart for years. I was pretty sure her plan involved Lena walking away with a chunk of my wealth to pump into their struggling printing company. After I'd been dragged through the mud, of course. Her mother ran on bitterness, revenge, and greed. I eventually sat Lena down and told her I knew about the wager. I warned her. If her mother managed to plant some smooth-talking guy in her life, I wouldn't hesitate to cut ties. Lena exploded. "What kind of woman do you think I am?" she shouted. "You think I don't know about that disgusting bet? I'd be furious if anyone ever tried to play me like that." That was the reaction I needed. "Good," I said. "Then there's no reason to talk about it again." Things began to shift when Lena started working full-time. The change was slow, but noticeable. Home life started to lose its warmth. I wanted us to have another baby, but she wasn't interested. When she'd stayed home with our first child, things had been tough but comforting. Now, everything felt cold and routine. I didn't press her at first. She was pouring energy into trying to revive her family's outdated printing shop, even as her mother was actively scaring off the few loyal customers they had left. Meanwhile, my own business was booming. I even offered Lena a position in my company, better pay, better prospects, but she refused. Demand for my thermal heating systems was surging with the rise in oil prices. Even with my busy schedule, I still made the effort to contribute at home. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but we held it together, for a while at least. We still had moments where things felt normal. I tried hard to encourage her to walk away from the failing business, and distance herself from her mother's toxic grip. But instead, she pulled away even more. She started taking our son to her parents' cottage on weekends, often staying longer than she'd said. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. We had our first real confrontation. To her credit, she seemed to realize her mother had crossed a line and promised to spend more weekends at home. But the promise didn't last. 3 months passed, and she was back to the same pattern. Weekends with her mother became routine again. Our social life began to vanish. We rarely saw our friends anymore. I wasn't in denial. I knew exactly what was going on. After years of trying, her mother had finally managed to drive a wedge between us. Then came the final blow. Our son told me that someone named Tobias had kissed Lena during one of those weekend trips. I wasn't surprised. I'd been bracing for it. It was the moment I knew things had truly fallen apart. Despite all my efforts to be a good partner and father, our marriage was crumbling. Of course I was hurt. But strangely, I also felt a surge of relief, as if a burden had been lifted. Maybe this was my way out from under the shadow of a woman who'd made it her mission to see me ruined. In the end, Lena had always chosen her mother's side. And by now, I didn't care if she continued to do so. Still, I wanted to offer her one final, genuine chance to make things right. If she truly wanted to rebuild what we had, the opportunity was there. That chance came on a Friday night. As usual, Lena mentioned she'd be heading to her mother's the next morning and wouldn't return until late Sunday. I knew it was time to draw the line. Honestly, I had already let go. But for our son's sake, I needed to try once more. So I said, "Please don't go this weekend. You were just there. Why not stay home? We could have a proper weekend as a family, maybe invite a few friends over, grill some food, relax." It had been ages since we'd shared a moment that felt real, something just the two of us. She gave me a surprised look before saying, "I promised my mom I'd drop by and help her out. She's got some guests coming over." "Guests?" I echoed, trying not to let my frustration slip through. Why are her visitors suddenly more important than plans with our own friends? Or maybe this is about one guest in particular. Could it be someone named Tobias? As soon as I said his name, her eyes gave something away, just for a second. She quickly regrouped and replied, "Tobias? He's just a family acquaintance. He helps my mom with some European Union regulations sometimes. Me too, occasionally. We're not especially close, and I don't even know if he'll be there." "And how old is this very helpful family friend of yours?" I asked. "Let me guess. Early 30s, tall, easy on the eyes, and conveniently single?" "He's 30, she answered coolly. "But no, he's married. His wife's working a short-term post with the UN in Kosovo. That's why he's around more often on weekends. He visits his mother." Her explanation, something about needing advice on EU laws, wasn't entirely unbelievable. Still, I couldn't help but wonder why a man in his 30s would willingly spend his weekends with an elderly woman unless something more was happening. "What's really going on between you and Tobias?" I pressed. "Because honestly, it sounds like you'd prefer his company over mine." Again, a flicker of nervousness passed over her face before she shot back, "It's purely professional. Why are you twisting this?" "I don't even know anymore," I muttered. "You cheated on your ex before we got together. How do I know you're not doing the same thing again?" "That's not fair," she snapped. "That was a different time. I was young, I fell for you, and I still love you." "Maybe you think you do," I said. "But if this is your idea of love now, I want no part of it. There's nothing left between us to hold on to. Our connection is barely holding together, if it exists at all. Our intimacy is non-existent. You'd rather spend your weekends with Tobias than be with your husband. You keep claiming to love me, but your actions say the opposite. I've had enough of your mother meddling in our lives. I'm prepared to offer a fair divorce agreement so you can have the freedom to be with Tobias, or whoever else." The word divorce hit her like a punch. Her face went pale and she shouted, "Divorce? Are you kidding me? Just because I want to see my mother? Have you completely lost your mind? That's no reason to walk away from a marriage." Maybe not by itself, I admitted. But you're over there from morning until night, practically every day. What kind of marriage is this? If this family means anything to you, skip this weekend with Tobias. Stay here. Let's talk. Let's try to fix this mess before it's too late. If you really love me like you say, prove it. I do love you, she said firmly, but I made a promise to my mom and I can't break it. Please understand. I want to stay. Just be patient a little longer. Midsummer's Eve is next Friday. We'll have the whole day together. And in July, we'll go to the cottage for a week, just the two of us. Oh, how generous, I said with sarcasm. A full week with my devoted wife, at the end of next month. What a blessing. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Midsummer's Eve is a day Tobias is likely unavailable. Probably off vacationing with his actual wife. What luck for us, huh? Or maybe you forgot that Laura left me on a Midsummer's Eve too. That hit a nerve. She broke down. You're cruel, she cried. None of this is funny. Do you think it's easy being married to someone who's always suspicious and twists my words? You call that love? Listen, Lena, I said, my patience finally exhausted. I'm not stopping you from leaving if that's what you want, especially if this guy means more to you than I do. But if you go, take the baby with you. I'm working with the drilling gear tomorrow, and I can't be looking after him. That pushed her past the breaking point. She screamed, You're treating me like I'm cheating, like I'm just some cheap fling. My mother was right. You are a bastard. Then came the tears, raw and uncontrollable. At that point, I drew a hard boundary. Whether or not she admitted it, something was going on between her and Tobias. I wasn't going to press her anymore. Our marriage was barely hanging on. Maybe it had already snapped. Still, I made one last effort to keep it together. The only reason I didn't throw her out that instant was simple. If I caught her in the act, I'd have stronger grounds for a better divorce. Tired of the yelling and the accusations, I left the house for a while. I needed a strong drink and didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, so I headed to my favorite pub. Looking back, it may have been the smartest choice I'd made in months. While nursing a whiskey at the bar, I spotted Mona, Laura's old friend, sitting in a booth with her husband. I walked over casually and asked if she had any idea what Laura had been up to recently. Mona smiled and said, You don't know? She's back. She left Sven, bought a little place here, and moved in about 2 weeks ago. She's been asking about you. Mona's words echoed in my head. Why don't you just talk to her yourself instead of sending messages through me? She'd passed along Laura's number, and acting on impulse, I called. I knew the risk. I could easily end up humiliated if she rejected me outright or told me to stay gone for good. But I figured, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I hit dial, and to my surprise, she answered. Hey Laura, it's Martin, your ex, if that rings any bells. Mona told me you were back in town, and I just wanted to say, welcome home. That was the gamble. Would she hang up? Go quiet? To my relief, she didn't. She actually sounded happy to hear from me. We chatted longer than I expected. Light conversation, easy laughter. By the end of the call, she agreed to meet for lunch that Saturday. I floated through the rest of the day, spending the evening at Mona's with her and her husband. Later that night, when I got home, Lena pretended to be asleep, and when she left for her mom's the next morning, I was already dead to the world. Saturday started slow, routine checks on the rig to pass the time. By early afternoon, I was parked outside the restaurant, watching the door like it might give me a sign. I won't lie, I felt almost exactly like I did the first time I waited for her, nearly a decade ago. As the minutes ticked by and she didn't show, doubt crept in. Maybe she'd bailed. And then there she was, just like that, walking toward me. She hadn't lost that effortless beauty that once stopped me in my tracks. But now, there was something new in the way she carried herself, an elegance that came with age and experience. Beside her was a young girl, her daughter Jennifer. When Laura hugged me, something stirred in me, something I hadn't expected. A jolt of desire, sudden and real. She felt it too, I could see it in her face. For a second she tensed. But when I stepped back and didn't push it, her features softened, and we slipped into the easy rhythm of old friends catching up. Lunch was full of warmth and laughter, and afterward, we wandered through the park nearby. Out of nowhere, she turned to me. "Tell me the truth. Why did you really want to see me again?" "Faith, hope, and maybe a pinch of charity," I said, half joking. She tilted her head, trying to read me. "Can I tell you something I've wanted to say for years?" "Of course," I said, genuinely curious. She took a moment. "I've made 3 big mistakes in my life. The first one? Going to that awful wedding. You were right. I never should have gone. The groom kept pushing me into activities with his insufferable brother, like he was trying to spark something between us. It was humiliating. When he asked if I had feelings for the guy, I snapped, told him off, and walked out. I didn't invite him or his brother to my and Sven's wedding afterward. They were furious. "I thought you'd understand when I got back." But then Lena's boyfriend called me, told me you'd slept with her, and that she'd been saving herself for him. I was still in love with you. I was hurt. So I made mistake number 2. I shut you out completely. Wouldn't even let you explain. I only started seeing Sven to get revenge. I figured I'd end it eventually, and you and I would find our way back. But then Lena got pregnant, and everything changed. You did the right thing, and I cried for weeks, knowing I'd blown it. My 3rd mistake? Marrying Sven. If I hadn't been so impulsive, maybe we would have been the ones who got married. I nodded slowly. I made a serious mistake too. That night with Lena. We weren't together anymore, and technically I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I should have fought for you instead of giving in to a lonely moment. I've regretted it ever since. But don't you think, maybe it's not too late to begin again? She blinked, caught off guard. What did you just say? I said things with Lena are falling apart. I'm almost certain she's cheating on me. Can't prove it yet, but I'm close. I asked her not to go on her weekend trip to her mom's, which, if I'm right, is also where her lover lives. She went anyway. I've made up my mind. It's over. Whether I get proof or not, I'm filing for divorce within the month. Her voice dropped. I thought things were good between you two. They were, for a while. You know that saying, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with? That's how it started. But over time, I really did fall for her. Deeply. Now that part of my life is closing. I looked at her. What about you? Is there someone new? She met my eyes. Yes. I've been talking to a guy I met online. Handsome. We're meeting for the first time tomorrow, for lunch. So I'm just a little early for your date? I teased. Then, more seriously, still, I'd like to apply for the role of Plan B, in case Prince Charming doesn't live up to his profile. She studied me carefully, her expression unreadable. Then she asked, You don't think this counts as a real date? I gave her a crooked smile. Seeing you today? Best decision I've made in a long time. But I won't lie. I want more. I want to see you again. Not just as your friend. She shook her head gently, her tone steady. Number, I don't want you to be my backup plan. That's not fair to either of us. Not at all, she said. But when she saw the disappointment flash across my face, she quickly added, You're the only one I want. If you're genuine and can promise me honesty, I won't need anyone else in my life. I'll cancel the date. It honestly feels like fortune is on my side today. And please remember, I never betrayed you during our engagement. You were the one who ended it, I reminded her. When I met Lena, I was alone. I can't be unfaithful to her, not until it's truly over. But since our kids are around the same age, maybe we could try to reconnect, as friends, if that's something you'd consider. I've already booked a gorgeous house by the sea for July. I give you my word. By then, Lena and I will have gone our separate ways. That night, Laura invited me to dinner at her place. We began sketching out what the coming weeks might look like. Jennifer and I already shared a good connection, and she didn't seem bothered by her mother being in a relationship. I stayed over in Laura's guest bedroom, and the next morning, a Sunday, we drove out to the coast together. Lena returned home late that evening. We spoke briefly before heading to bed. The following week passed with barely a word exchanged between us. When I raised the topic of divorce, Her mood immediately turned somber. By Friday, the night before Midsummer's Eve, Laura and Jennifer had gone to stay with Laura's parents. Lena and I, meanwhile, accepted a neighbor's invitation to a small midsummer gathering with several families and their children. The afternoon was spent playing games with the kids. That evening, the adults took part in the festivities, games, dancing, and conversation. I barely spoke to Lena and didn't dance with her at all. She used to put on a show of being the loving wife in public, but not this time. Now, the silence and distance between us were evident to everyone. On Midsummer's Day, she visited her mother but didn't stay overnight, most likely because Tobias wasn't with her. I, on the other hand, joined Laura at her parents' home. They welcomed me warmly and gave their blessing for our relationship, wishing us well. In the days that followed, the atmosphere between Lena and me was chilly and detached. We remained polite, but any trace of intimacy had vanished. That weekend, Lena took our son on a 3-day trip to Legoland with her parents. Afterward, she planned to spend 2 days visiting her cousin, a tradition she kept each year. Quietly, I felt a sense of relief. I'd finally have 4 nights to stay with Laura. Laura and I were eager to move forward. But if Lena decided to contest the divorce, staying faithful would only strengthen my position. So, Laura and I agreed to wait a bit longer. I spent those few days with her and a close friend of hers. The warmth and affection between us never waned. What we had felt, genuine, real love. Over the summer, Lena and I both remained preoccupied with work. We decided to take just 2 weeks off, the final week of which we'd spend at the beach house I'd already reserved. We had originally planned a 2-week vacation to Thailand in November, arrangements made before Tobias entered the picture. But given how things had unfolded, I no longer intended to go anywhere with her. I had promised Laura that I would leave Lena before the final week of summer vacation began, and that the 2 of us would spend it together at the coastal house. I meant to honor that promise. I think Lena had finally come to understand just how much damage she had done to our marriage and tried, maybe too late, to reclaim the role of the devoted wife. What surprised me most was that she started calling me every single night while she was away, something she'd never done, not even during the weekends she spent with her parents. Each time, she'd say how much she missed me, but I was only interested in talking to our son. On the second day of their Legoland trip, I asked him a few quick questions. "Is Tobias with you?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. I doubt the adults picked up on it, but I sensed Lena was calling out of guilt, probably for having brought Tobias along. When they came home for one night between their 2 trips, my suspicion grew stronger. That evening, my son looked up at me and asked, "Is it true that bad wolves can get into our house and eat me?" "Who told you that?" I asked, startled. "Grandma." "Why would she say something so scary? Did you do something to upset her?" "Not yet," he said, "but we have a secret. If I tell you," he added solemnly, "the wolves will come and eat me." I kept my tone light. "What secret? That Tobias came on the trip with you and your mom? That's not much of a secret. Your mom already told me she and Tobias shared a room, and you and Grandma had your own." "You already knew my secret," he said. "I did," I replied gently. "But just because someone else knows it doesn't mean it's not still a secret." "There aren't really wolves, right?" "Of course not," I assured him. "But do me a favor. Let's not tell Mom we talked about your secret." Lena had crossed a line. She'd let that scumbag Tobias intimidate my son. That, by itself, made her unforgivable. There was no coming back from it. I immediately rang up Niels to voice my concerns and scrap our planned trip. Afterward, I brought Laura and my old friend Dan into the loop. Both were quick to get on board. Dan, in particular, got a twisted thrill out of sleeping with married women in their own bedrooms. He got off on the idea of fooling oblivious husbands under their own roofs. I figured Tobias wouldn't be able to resist temptation with me out of town, so I set up a discreet, high-resolution wireless camera in the bedroom. It came with a motion sensor and worked great in low light. The feed was routed to a long-play VCR stashed in the garage. I'd tested the entire system multiple times, and it worked perfectly. In my Nissan King cab work truck, I packed fresh door locks and several empty moving boxes, the tools I'd need to erase Lena and her belongings from my world. For 2 long, unbearable days, I pretended everything was normal while she played the role of loving wife. Then, early Saturday morning, I packed suitcases for myself and our boy for a supposedly week-long vacation. Just as we'd told her, we left that morning. Lena didn't break character. She claimed she hated having to stay behind for work and said she'd miss us terribly. I skipped the goodbye kiss, but told her I'd call every day. She even stood in the driveway smiling and waving as we pulled away. Watching her act like the devoted partner she wasn't made me sick. I once loved that woman deeply, and now she was nothing but a lying cheat. But instead of heading to Niels's cabin, I drove straight to Laura's garage and parked the car there. The real plan was just getting underway. Niels and his wife were fully in on it. They agreed to pretend I was with them for the week, and if Lena ever tried to verify my whereabouts, they'd provide airtight cover. That same evening, around 6 p.m., Laura did a quick drive-by of my house. Nothing seemed out of place. But 2 hours later, she circled back and this time spotted a silver Volvo XC90 parked in the driveway. Since it was summertime and people came and went without much notice, no one in the neighborhood would have thought twice about a strange vehicle showing up. Around 11 that night, I borrowed Laura's car and swung by for another check. The SUV was still parked outside. By 1 a.m., I returned, this time on a bike, and quietly entered the garage. I powered on the monitor. Bingo. There they were, Lena and some guy, stepping out of the bathroom together. Knowing I had concrete proof to take into divorce court lifted a weight from my chest. Lena wasn't dumb, far from it, which made her blatant carelessness hard to understand. It almost felt intentional, like she was daring me to catch her, handing over evidence without a fight. She'd already dragged Tobias along on our family trip, and later, she let her toxic mother scare our son with fairy tales about wolves. Maybe, on some deep level, she wanted me to leave her. Maybe she needed our child to see her as a victim, to feel guilt that would tether him to her. I waited, watching. They were both in bed, whispering quietly to each other. Lena spoke first. "Let's try to get some rest. We'll need the energy." Tobias replied, "I'm going to miss you so much. Every weekend without you is going to kill me, even with my wife still around. Can't we keep seeing each other once a month? Things at home are worse than I thought." Martin was furious about our last weekend. He left without even saying goodbye. I should have stayed when he asked me to. She let out a breath. "That weekend changed everything. You're incredible, but I still want my marriage to work. I want a second chance with my husband." I ground my teeth together. "Too late for that, you treacherous fraud." But Tobias wasn't fazed. "You don't have to feel guilty," he said. "That weekend was perfect. Meeting monthly will give us something to look forward to." Lena's tone cooled, almost resentful. "No, Tobias." After breakfast that day, it ended. I went back to being a loyal wife, doing everything to win him back. But we'll talk about that later. Right now, I'm still yours. Let's not waste what time we have left. Whatever response he gave was too quiet for me to catch, but it was clear he didn't have much more to offer. It wasn't long before they were both asleep, curled up under the sheets. I tapped my phone and called Dan. He picked up after a few rings. I told him, "It's time. You ready?" He promised he'd be there within 15 minutes. I could have dealt with Tobias on my own, but I needed someone there as a witness. Dan could confirm I never laid a hand on either of them. Without that, Lena's mother might have spun some story of abuse and dragged lawyers into it. Besides, Dan had a professional-grade video camera. He filmed weddings on the side and jumped at any excuse to use his expensive gear. I wanted this footage to be beyond question, better than anything my surveillance setup could provide. Dan arrived just as promised. We quickly reviewed our plan, then made our way into the house. The bedroom door was shut. I nudged it open slightly and saw them lying there, tucked in together and sleeping soundly. Dan positioned the camera and gave me a nod. Quietly, I whispered. Let's begin. I pushed the door open, and Dan instantly flicked on a glaring halogen light powered by batteries and began filming. I stepped quietly toward the bed, eased the blanket back without stirring the two in it, and let Dan record for about 5 seconds. Then I shouted, "What the hell is this?" They woke up in a panic, eyes squinting against the sharp light, confused and stunned. It took them a few moments to realize what was happening. Lena's gaze locked with mine. She froze, stunned, and then screamed, "No! No, 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 please don't!" I grabbed the camera from Dan and told him to get the naked Tobias out of my house. Without hesitation, Dan seized Tobias by the hair, yanked him off the mattress, and dragged him toward the exit. I heard the sounds of shouting and scuffling outside the room, but I didn't go after them. A few minutes later, Dan returned, searching for Tobias's car keys. He rifled through the guy's jeans, found the keys, and tossed them onto the driveway. Seconds later, we heard his car tear out down the street. All the while, Lena's cries had turned to quiet sobbing. I think she realized at that point that everything was over. She didn't try to justify it or tell a lie. I told her, plain and direct, that our marriage was done. I told her to get dressed and leave. She had no car anymore, so Dan would arrange for a cab. I made it clear. By the next day, the locks would be changed. Her things would be boxed up and ready for pickup in the afternoon. That's when she exploded, shouting that I was heartless, that she was still my wife and didn't deserve this. "Yell all you want," I told her. "It won't change a thing. Read the prenup. It's in your bank's safety box. We're finished. You're leaving." She dropped to begging, asking me not to throw her out, to talk things over. I said we could. "Sure," I told her. "Tomorrow, when you come get your stuff at 4, by yourself. And don't you dare bring your garbage parents onto my property." The taxi arrived. She waited about 10 minutes before finally stepping out and leaving. Dan went home to get some rest, and I called Laura to tell her what happened, that I'd found Lena in bed with some guy named Tobias, that it was over. I said I'd stay in the house until I could change the locks. I'd already bought replacements. They were in my truck. I had won the confrontation, but there was no triumph in it, just a numb emptiness. My marriage had ended, and I felt drained. I couldn't sleep. I went to the garage, took the tape from the camera, slipped it into the VCR, rewound it, and watched. What played out was what I had just gone through. The two of them wrapped in each other in my bed, followed by the moment Dan and I stormed in. Still too shaken to rest, I began packing Lena's things. Drawer by drawer, closet to closet. I folded her clothes neatly and stacked them in the living room. Around 9 in the morning, Laura arrived with the kids and a basket of breakfast. Later, I went through Tobias's wallet and found contact info for his wife in Kosovo. I called her, told her exactly what happened, that I'd caught her husband in bed with mine, and had it all on tape. She was livid. She wanted proof and asked for screenshots. I told her I'd send them. After making a duplicate of the footage for Lena, I captured stills from the video and emailed them to Tobias's wife. Once the locks were replaced, I packed every last one of Lena's belongings into boxes, clearly labeled with lists of their contents. I didn't feel the need to destroy anything. I wasn't out for petty revenge. Except for the bed. I took a chainsaw and shredded the expensive, nearly new bed we'd shared, reduced it to a pile of firewood, and dumped the debris on the driveway. Laura and the kids came back with lunch, giving me a short break. Then, just before 4 p.m., Lena arrived, alone, driving the old Ford Transit from the print shop. She froze for a second when she saw the wreckage of the bed, then quietly came inside. I brewed some coffee and invited her to sit. She accepted, and through tears, launched into a long, emotional speech. She swore she still loved me, said she'd made a terrible mistake. She begged for another chance. She promised to cut her hours at the print shop, promised weekends with the family, said she'd never attend my mother's events without me again. She even said she wanted to try for another baby. I listened, then told her, 3 weeks ago maybe that would have mattered, but not now. Not after this. She tried once more. apologizing, trying to explain, but I cut her off. Do you think I'm an idiot? That I'd buy whatever garbage you're about to say about Tobias? A guy in his 30s who spends his weekends hanging around your disgusting mother? She said nothing. I looked her in the eye. You're gorgeous, Lena. I can't fault him for wanting you. But I can fault you for being so cheap, for throwing away our marriage, for hurting our child like this. Then I asked her, why, Lena? Was I such a terrible husband that you had to sleep with that fool? You weren't my first choice, not even the best choice, but I married you when you needed someone, and I did grow to love you. I had stayed faithful to you, right up until this very moment. Her voice trembled through her sobs. This isn't on you. My love for you never ended. You've always been the only one who truly held my heart. But while I remained yours alone, I know you gave yourself to others. I looked at her and replied, I regret that one lapse in judgment. It was a single mistake, one man, and I promise it won't happen again. Then I added with bitterness, now that you've gotten what you wanted, I hope you're pleased. Your dear mother must be ecstatic. This was the ending she hoped for all along. Go ahead and tell her I'm done caring about what you've done. Your infidelity freed me in the end. I've married someone who actually cherishes me. Can't you see that? You ruined what we had that Friday before midsummer. I begged you to stay and spend the weekend with our family. Instead, you went off to entertain Tobias at your mother's place. Did you really expect me to sit there and accept being treated like a fool? The only reason I didn't kick you out right then was because I needed solid proof of your cheating. Otherwise, I couldn't prevent a payout. I even gave you the chance to leave on fair terms, remember? But shockingly, you rejected the offer. You're a smart woman. You should have seen it coming. There was no way I'd accept being made into some pathetic husband clinging to a disloyal wife. Back then, I didn't want a divorce, and honestly, I still don't, because I do still love you. Sure, I figured the kid might have said something about Tobias, and maybe you started getting suspicious, but I never imagined you'd get actual proof. I hated what I'd done. I told myself Tobias would be my one and only mistake, that I would never betray you again. And I meant that. That evening in our home was supposed to be the end of it all. The last night with him, and the last time I would ever cross that line. I felt a weight lift when it was over. I won't pretend otherwise. Your silence and coldness after that weekend forced me to face what I'd done to our relationship. You stopped laughing, stopped sharing life with me, and it scared me. I wanted to be the wife I had promised to be. I was determined to win back your love. I planned that week at the lake house to rekindle us, to pamper you, to finally give you the child you longed for. I even began looking for a new job to support us better. But maybe I waited too long to try. I kept my voice even. You're right, that Friday before midsummer was the moment everything shifted. You made it clear what mattered most to you. And after last night, there's only one choice left. I slid the divorce papers across to her. Please sign. Let's end this without more drama. Her face froze. What are you saying? I explained. Whether this goes smoothly or not, the terms are all outlined in our prenup. You've got a copy in your safety deposit box. You'll leave with what's legally yours. I'll keep everything that belongs to me, which, aside from your clothing, is nearly everything. I want sole custody of our son, but you'll have generous visitation once you've found your own home. But I refuse to let him step foot into that toxic place you're living in now, I added. Her expression turned ghostly. You mean I walk away with nothing from everything we created together? She whispered. That's right, I confirmed. The house, the cars, my financial holdings, my savings, the drilling business, they were all mine before you, and they remain mine now. And don't forget, I reminded her, your mother was the one who pushed for that prenup. I built this life with my own hands. I earned every bit of it. She barely gave you enough allowance to buy clothes. I had investigators look into her printing company. It's circling the drain. It'll be bankrupt before the year ends. She owes you a considerable amount. You need to act fast and collect before the banks swallow everything. If you cooperate with this divorce, I'll even foot the bill for a lawyer to help you get what's owed. No matter how this plays out, your mother's going down. At least this way, you'll come away with something. She may see this as some form of vengeance, but in truth, I'm doing this for our son. You'll need that money to find a proper place, somewhere suitable for when he visits. That's the only reason I'm stepping in. Regardless of what you did to me or to him, you're still his mother. She broke down then, sobbing uncontrollably as she tried to express her regret, offering apology after apology. I didn't let her finish. Do you remember how I pleaded with you? Just one weekend, just one, where we'd be together as a family, and you picked Tobias instead? That was your choice. Now, I've made mine. Then she made one final attempt, swearing that nothing ever happened between her and Tobias. I said nothing. I reached for the remote and hit play. The screen lit up. Lena screamed, "Stop it! Please, just turn it off!" I froze the video, looked her straight in the eye. I'm sorry, Lena, but this is more than any man should be expected to bear. Just tell me, why did you do it? If you had just come to me and said you wanted out, we could have resolved this on far better terms for you. But instead, you chose betrayal, and with him of all people. She broke down right there, the illusion finally collapsing. I didn't let up. It's too late now. What's done can't be undone, but we can still keep this civil. But if that fire-spewing dragon you call a mother meddles again, or pokes her nose in our business, that video gets released. The whole town will see what kind of woman I was married to. Do you understand? Her body trembled, and her voice rose, tinged with desperation. You can't! You wouldn't! I've already lost everything. I'm even about to lose my job. Then here's how you avoid total ruin, I said coldly. Cooperate. Follow the terms of the prenup, don't cause trouble, and you'll get through this with some dignity intact. Agree to the settlement and I'll make sure your final paycheck comes through. And don't forget, you still have Tobias. He'll look after you, just like I did, back when you were cheating on your last boyfriend. He can't, she said softly. He's married. Not for long, I replied. I talked to his wife this morning. She was already suspicious, but after lunch, after seeing the photos and that short video clip, I doubt they'll be celebrating any anniversaries. She told me she's done with him. So congrats, Lena. Tobias is yours now. You're sick, she snapped. How could you destroy their marriage like that? It was easy, I answered. He left his wallet behind last night. His wife's number was in it. You must have forgotten. That smug jerk slept with my wife in our bed. Our bed. He didn't just cheat, he dismantled my life. Laura had made it clear she didn't want any of the furniture or belongings. I only asked for what was in my office, my gear, personal recordings, and some valuable art pieces. We arranged to meet the following Saturday to split up family photos and videos. I let Lena take anything she wanted. She didn't even mention the expensive, nearly new bed, the one I'd smashed and dumped on the driveway. She promised to collect the rest of her stuff once she had her own place. I had already planned to donate anything left behind to the local Salvation Army store. She seemed almost grateful for that, said it'd help her furnish her new apartment since she was short on money. Eventually, she agreed that taking the paycheck was the smart move. So, she opted for the easier road, signed the papers. Let me help her load her things into a rental van. Once she was gone, I headed straight to Laura's. She'd made a candle-lit dinner, and the night was perfect. Everything had changed. These days, coming home after work feels good again. Laughter echoes through the halls, and warmth has returned. Our weekends are full of laughter, shared activities, and new memories. We'd expected the kids to need time to adjust, but surprisingly, they clicked instantly. You'd think they were siblings from the start. The postcard was Dan's idea. I agreed, and he asked Laura to pick out a fancy greeting card. In her flawless, graceful handwriting, she wrote, "Dear friends, congratulations on winning your wager. You succeeded in guiding your only daughter to betray a loving, devoted husband, and into the arms of a married man. She'll be forever in your debt. Warm regards, your faithful friend." I mailed it straight to Lena's father. Word got around later that he had never approved of Tobias's weekend visits. but his wife had kept quiet. When I walked away, Lena reportedly cried for hours. That card pushed her father past his breaking point. For the first time, he saw what a coward he'd been, and how his silence had made him the butt of every joke in their social circle. Fueled by alcohol and long-buried anger, he confronted his wife. What began as a shouting match spiraled into violence. She spent a week in the hospital. He spent the night behind bars. The day before her release, he packed up and left for good. With no minors involved, their divorce was finalized within 3 months. Lena never fought it. She didn't even hire an attorney. Everything proceeded without issue. I was granted custody of our child. I gave her my word. I wouldn't make visitation difficult. She could see our kid up to 182 days a year, provided she had a safe, stable home. But I laid down one rule: our child would never step foot in her mother's house or her vacation home. She didn't argue. Their bond had been fractured for years, and Lena had already walked out on her job at her mother's print shop. When she demanded the unpaid wages, her mother lost it, refused to give her a dime, and flipped when Lena took legal action. Lena won. The enforcement agency made sure she got every cent she was owed, just 2 weeks before the print shop went under for good. At first, the bank resisted, but Niels connected her with a sharp lawyer who managed to convince them to withdraw their challenge. Tobias's short stay at my place, sparked by his involvement with Lena, began with excitement and a strange sense of comfort, but it quickly unraveled into chaos. I walked in on him in my bed, and he bolted, completely naked, leaping into his Volvo. Unfortunately for him, he ran straight into a police checkpoint meant to catch drunk drivers heading home from parties. Believing their relationship had reached a meaningful milestone, Tobias and Lena celebrated with dinner, finishing off my best bottle of Rioja and generously pouring out the cognac. However, the evening soon turned into a nightmare when Tobias, still without clothes, ended up at the police station for a blood alcohol screening. One of Lena's acquaintances later told me the story had spread. Tobias had received a hefty fine and lost his driving privileges for 2 years. Staying true to her intentions, his wife returned only long enough to gather her belongings and file for divorce. She's since relocated to Geneva, where she works for the United Nations and lives with an Italian co-worker she met during a mission in Kosovo. Tobias, on the other hand, turned to doctor. Booze in an effort to sort through his emotional collapse, which led to a temporary leave from his position. From that point on, he cut all contact with Lena. Despite her repeated calls, sometimes tearful and insistent, he never picked up. He had once promised to be there for her if her own marriage collapsed, offering himself as a source of comfort. But she was forced to confront the truth. His words had been hollow, and she had placed her faith in someone undeserving. Eventually, she came to terms with the fact that he was emotionally fractured beyond repair and let go of any hope for reconciliation. With some additional money coming in from her work at the printing company, Lena managed to secure a well-located apartment and found a new job without much trouble. While we cooperate amicably in raising our child, our interactions remain strictly logistical. Personal topics are off-limits. Lena remains strikingly attractive and, free from her mother's oppressive presence, far more compatible as a partner. That's why I still find it odd that she hasn't started seeing anyone new. After my own divorce concluded, Laura and I tied the knot. We sold our old places and bought a house together. She's now pregnant, and in many ways, we reflect the structure of today's patchwork families. 3 kids, each from different parents. But we don't dwell on that. What matters is simple. We're truly happy. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the Force be with you. See you soon, my friend.